Daniel Hayes sat quietly in the small passenger cabin as the ship, Terra's Hope, moved through space toward Nexus Prime. He looked like any other middle-aged man in a business suit. His brown hair was neatly combed, and his hands held a leather briefcase filled with trade documents. Anyone watching him would think he was just another boring diplomat from Earth. They would be wrong. Hayes stared out the small window at the stars rushing past. This was his first time leaving the solar system, but he had studied every detail about where he was going. Nexus Prime was a massive space station that served as the meeting place for the Galactic Council. 12 different alien species controlled most of known space through this council, and they had agreed to meet with humans for the first time. The ship's captain, a nervous man named Pete Collins, walked over to Hayes. "We'll be there in 2 hours, sir. Are you ready for this?" Hayes smiled the same calm smile he had practiced 1,000 times. As ready as anyone can be for humanity's first real contact with alien civilization. Captain Collins nodded and walked away. He had no idea that the quiet diplomat sitting in his ship had killed more enemies than most soldiers ever saw. Hayes had served 15 years in Earth's most secret military unit before taking this assignment. His real name wasn't even Daniel Hayes, but the identity was so perfect that even he sometimes forgot his original name. The mission briefing had been simple. Go to Nexus Prime. Talk to the aliens. Make them think humans were peaceful traders who just wanted to do business. Learn everything possible about their military strength, their technology, and their real intentions toward Earth. Earth's government suspected the Galactic Council was not as friendly as they pretended to be. Human colonies had been expanding rapidly, and several survey ships had disappeared near Council territory. The official explanation was always equipment failure or navigation errors. Earth's military leaders thought otherwise. Hayes opened his briefcase and reviewed his cover story one more time. He was supposed to be a trade representative from the Earth Commerce Authority. His job was to negotiate shipping routes and establish trading posts. The briefcase contained real trade proposals, real economic data, and real identification documents. Everything about Daniel Hayes, the diplomat, was completely true, except for the part about him actually being a diplomat. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the window, Hayes could see Nexus Prime growing larger. The station was enormous, larger than any human structure. It looked like a giant wheel spinning slowly in space, with docking arms reaching out like spokes. Thousands of ships of different shapes and sizes were attached to those arms. "First time seeing aliens?" Captain Collins asked, returning to Hayes' side. "Yes," Hayes replied, which was true. He had studied pictures and videos, but this would be his first face-to-face meeting with non-human intelligence. "They single quotes different," Collins said. "I've made supply runs here before. The reptile ones, the Saurians, they're the military arm of the Council. Cold as ice and twice as mean. The bug-like ones, the Chithuri, they handle most of the trade. They're actually pretty decent to deal with. Then you've got the energy beings, the luminals, who nobody really understands." Hayes listened carefully while appearing only politely interested. Every piece of information was valuable. The docking process took 30 minutes. Hayes could feel the artificial gravity shift as they connected to the station's rotation. Through the small porthole, he watched alien workers in environmental suits guiding the ship into its berth. They moved differently than humans, with purposes and rhythms that seemed strange. When the airlock opened, Hayes was greeted by a tall, thin humanoid with blue-gray skin and large, dark eyes. The alien wore flowing robes and spoke in perfect English through a translation device. "Welcome to Nexus Prime, Representative Hayes. I am Diplomatic Coordinator Lithwan of the Ethereal Collective. We are honored by humanity's presence." Hayes stepped forward with his practiced diplomatic smile. "The honor is ours, Coordinator Lithwan. Earth is grateful for this opportunity." As they walked through the station's corridors, Hayes absorbed every detail. The walls were made of some kind of metal he didn't recognize. The lighting was softer than human preferences, and the air had a slightly sweet smell. Security cameras were everywhere, but they were different from human designs. Armed guards moved in pairs, and Hayes noted their equipment and positioning. With the trained eye of a soldier, "You will be meeting with Council Representative Zethkari tomorrow," Lithwan explained as they walked. "He speaks for the Saurian Empire in all military and security matters. Today, you may rest and explore the diplomatic quarters." Hayes nodded politely. "I look forward to our discussions." His quarters were comfortable but clearly designed for observation. Hayes spotted at least 3 hidden cameras and 2 listening devices within minutes of entering. He unpacked his clothes, set up his computer, and began reviewing trade documents just as any real diplomat would do. But as he read, his mind was working on a different level. He memorized the layout of the corridors they had walked through. He cataloged the types of security he had seen. He noted which species seemed to be in charge and which ones appeared to be subordinates. That evening, Hayes attended a welcome dinner in the diplomatic dining hall. Representatives from 8 different species were present, and the conversation was polite but cautious. Hayes played his role perfectly, asking questions about trade opportunities and cultural exchange while carefully listening for information about military capabilities and political tensions. The reptilian Saurian representative, a massive creature with yellow eyes and scales that looked like armor, watched Hayes throughout the meal. Zethkari spoke little, but Hayes could feel the alien studying him with the attention of a predator sizing up potential prey. As the dinner ended, Hayes returned to his quarters feeling satisfied with his first day. The alien saw exactly what he wanted them to see: a harmless human diplomat eager to make deals and avoid trouble. If they had known what Daniel Hayes really was, they would have killed him immediately. Instead, they were planning to let him learn their secrets, negotiate with their leaders, and return to Earth with a complete report on their military capabilities. They had no idea they were making the biggest mistake in galactic history. The negotiations with Zethkari began early the next morning. Hayes sat across from the massive Saurian in a sterile conference room. The reptilian alien was even more intimidating up close. His yellow eyes never blinked, and his clawed hands rested on the metal table like weapons waiting to be used. "Your species is young," Zethkari said in a voice that sounded like gravel being crushed. "You have only recently learned to travel between stars. Yet you expand very quickly." Hayes kept his diplomatic smile. "Humans are naturally curious. We like to explore and learn about new places. We hope to do this peacefully alongside the established galactic community." "Peacefully," Zethkari repeated the word as if it tasted bad. "Tell me, Diplomat Hayes, how many wars has your species fought in the last century?" The question was a trap, but Hayes had prepared for it. "Many, unfortunately. Humans have not always been wise. But we have learned from our mistakes. That is why we seek partnership with the Galactic Council." For 3 days, the talks continued. Hayes discussed trade routes, mineral rights, and cultural exchange programs. He signed preliminary agreements for human colonies to buy alien technology. Everything seemed to be going well, but Hayes was doing more than talking. Every night, he explored the station. His diplomatic credentials gave him access to many areas that were normally restricted. He told the guards he was studying galactic architecture for a report to Earth. They let him wander freely. On the second night, Hayes found something that changed everything. He was walking through a maintenance corridor when he heard voices speaking in the Saurian language. Hayes had studied the language during his mission preparation, though he had not told anyone he could understand it. He pressed himself against the wall and listened. "The human fleet positions are confirmed," one voice said. "Earth has only 12 major warships and 36 smaller vessels. Their technology is primitive. Good, replied another voice that Hayes recognized as Zethkari. Phase 1 of the elimination protocol can begin once we finish with their diplomat. Hayes felt his blood turn cold. Elimination protocol. They were planning to attack Earth. When do we move the battle fleets into position? The first voice asked. The fleets are already moving, Zethkari answered. Admiral Vorthak has positioned the 3rd and 5th battle groups in the Centauri system. They will strike Earth's outer colonies first, then move on the home world. Hayes remained perfectly still, listening to every word. The aliens discussed their battle plans in detail. They had been watching human expansion for years. They saw humans as a threat that needed to be removed before it grew too large. What about the other council members? Someone asked. The Ethereals and Chithari will support us once they see we are committed, Zethkari said. The others will not interfere. They fear humans as much as we do. Hayes waited until the voices moved away before he crept back to his quarters. His mind was racing. Earth had to be warned immediately. The alien fleets were already moving, which meant the attack could begin at any time. But back in his room, Hayes activated his secure communication device. It was disguised as a personal tablet that any diplomat might carry. He typed in the emergency codes and tried to send a message to Earth Military Command. The message would not transmit. Hayes tried different frequencies and encryption methods. Nothing worked. All his communications were being blocked or monitored. The aliens were not taking any chances. The next morning, Hayes sat through another negotiation session with Zethkari. The Saurian discussed shipping contracts and trade agreements as if nothing had changed. But Hayes noticed new details now. Extra guards were posted outside the conference room. Security cameras were focused more directly on him. His movements were being watched more carefully. That afternoon, Hayes attempted to contact the human ship Terra's Hope that had brought him to the station. Captain Collins was not available, and the ship's crew said they were having communication problems with their equipment. Hayes knew the aliens were cutting off all his escape routes. On the 3rd night, Hayes made his move. He had to get a message to Earth somehow. He used his diplomatic access to reach the station's main communication center. It was heavily guarded, but Hayes had learned the guard rotation patterns during his evening walks. He waited until the shift change at midnight, then slipped past the guards using maintenance corridors. Inside the communication center, Hayes found banks of alien computers and transmission equipment. He had studied alien technology during his military training, but this was far more advanced than anything he had seen. Working quickly, Hayes managed to access the transmission systems. He found the frequency used by Earth's deep space monitoring stations and began typing a coded message. It would look like random data to anyone intercepting it, but Earth's intelligence services would understand. Council hostile. Attack imminent. Prep defenses. Protocol 7 authorized. Just as Hayes finished sending the message, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and he heard the sound of running feet in the corridors. Outside, they had discovered him. Hayes deleted all traces of his transmission and moved toward the exit. But as he opened the door, he found himself facing a squad of armed Saurian guards. Their leader was Security Chief Vorthak, the same alien whose voice he had heard discussing the attack plans. Diplomat Hayes, Vorthak said with a cold smile. That showed rows of sharp teeth. You are in a restricted area. Hayes raised his hands and put on his most innocent expression. I'm terribly sorry. I was looking for the Cultural Exchange Library. I must have taken a wrong turn. Vorthak stepped closer. His yellow eyes studied Hayes carefully. Yes, you have taken a very wrong turn, but do not worry. We will help you find your way. The guards surrounded Hayes and marched him back toward the diplomatic quarters. But they did not take him to his room. Instead, they led him to a different section of the station, one he had never seen before. Where are we going? Hayes asked, still playing the confused diplomat. To a place where we can have a more private conversation, Vorthik replied. There are things we need to discuss. As they walked through darker corridors lined with security doors, Hayes realized the truth. The aliens knew who he really was. They had probably known from the beginning. The diplomatic mission had been a trap, and he had walked right into it. But, as the guards pushed him forward, Hayes felt something the aliens had not expected. He was not afraid. Instead, a cold, familiar feeling was settling over him. The feeling he had not experienced since his military days. The feeling of being ready for war. The aliens thought they had captured a helpless diplomat. They were about to learn the difference between Daniel Hayes, the trade representative, and the man he really was underneath the suit and tie. The game was about to change completely. The guards pushed Hayes into a small dark room with no windows. The walls were made of thick metal, and there was only one door. A single chair sat in the center of the room under a bright light. This was an interrogation chamber. Vorthik entered behind the guards. The massive Saurian carried a device that looked like a weapon mixed with a medical scanner. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Sit down, Diplomat Hayes, Vorthik ordered, pointing to the chair. Hayes walked slowly to the chair and sat down. He kept his hands visible and his expression calm. To anyone watching, he still looked like a frightened civilian who had gotten in over his head. You are not what you pretend to be, Vorthik said, circling the chair like a predator. Our scans of your quarters found traces of military-grade encryption software. Your medical records show old injuries consistent with combat training. Most interesting of all, your fingerprints match those of a human military officer who officially died in the Mars colony uprising 5 years ago. Hayes said nothing. He watched Vorthik move around the room, counting the alien steps, measuring distances, noting the positions of the guards. Colonel Jake Morrison of the Earth Special Operations Division, Vorthik continued. Except that is not your real name either, is it? Your species seems very fond of false identities. I don't know what you're talking about, Hayes replied in the same mild tone he had used throughout the negotiations. I'm a trade representative from the Commerce Authority. Vorthik laughed, a sound like broken glass. Still playing your role. Admirable, but pointless. We know Earth sent you to spy on us. We know you discovered our attack plans. Did you really think we would let you return home to warn your people? One of the guards, a younger Saurian with green scales, stepped forward. The human ship is requesting permission to depart. What should we tell them? Tell them there has been a small delay in the negotiations, Vorthik replied. Diplomat Hayes needs a few more days to finalize the agreements. They will wait, Hayes finally spoke. How long have you known? From the moment you arrived, Vorthik said with pride. Your government is not as clever as it thinks. We have been monitoring Earth's communications for months. We knew they would send someone to investigate our intentions. Then why go through with the negotiations? Because we wanted to see what you would do. We wanted to know how much Earth suspected. And we wanted to capture you alive to learn about your military capabilities. Vorthik moved closer to Hayes. You humans are so predictable. You think you are the first species to develop espionage and military intelligence. Hayes looked up at the alien looming over him. For the first time since arriving at the station, his diplomatic smile faded away. You're right, Hayes said quietly. We're not the first species to develop intelligence gathering. But there's something you don't understand about humans. What is that? Hayes' voice became colder. We're very good at learning from our mistakes. Before Vorthik could react, Hayes moved. He grabbed the security device from the alien's hand and drove it upward into Vorthik's throat. The Saurian stumbled backward, making choking sounds. The guards raised their weapons, but Hayes was already moving. He kicked a chair into the nearest guard, knocking the alien off balance. He rolled behind the overturned chair as energy bolts flashed through the air where he had been standing, the room filled with smoke from the weapons fire. Hayes used the confusion to move. He had memorized the layout of the room in the first few seconds. 3 guards, 1 door, 2 wall-mounted light sources. Standard interrogation setup. Hayes grabbed a piece of the broken chair and threw it at the main light. The room plunged into near darkness, lit only by the emergency lighting strips along the floor. The guards shouted to each other in their own language, trying to coordinate their search. They had been trained to fight organized military units, not a single human who moved like a ghost in the dark. Hayes struck from behind, using techniques he had learned fighting in the underground tunnels of Mars. He disabled the first guard with a blow to the nerve cluster at the base of the alien's neck. The second guard turned toward the sound, but Hayes was already moving again. The third guard managed to fire his weapon, but the shot went wide. Hayes closed the distance and used the alien's own weapon against him, redirecting the energy bolt into the wall. Sparks flew from damaged electrical systems. In less than 2 minutes, all 3 guards were unconscious on the floor. Vorthik was still alive but badly injured, gasping for air through his damaged throat. Hayes knelt beside the security chief. His voice was no longer the polite tone of a diplomat. It was the cold, professional voice of a soldier. "You made 2 mistakes," Hayes said. "First, you assumed I was just another spy. Second, you assumed humans fight like other species." Hayes took the weapons and security cards from the guards. He also took their communication devices and a small medical kit. Everything he did was fast and efficient, the result of years of training and experience. "The thing about humans," Hayes continued as he worked, "is that we don't just adapt to survive, we adapt to win. Every war we fight, every battle we lose, every mistake we make teaches us something new." Hayes activated one of the communication devices and began scanning the station's security frequencies. Within minutes, he had access to the internal communication network. "You want to know about human military capabilities?" Hayes asked Vorthik, who was watching him with growing fear. "Here's your first lesson. We don't just send soldiers to do soldier work. We send soldiers to do everything." Hayes began typing commands into the station security system. His fingers moved with practice speed across the alien interface. The diplomatic access codes he had been given were still active, and he used them to override several safety protocols. "Your people are about to attack Earth," Hayes said as he worked. "You think you're fighting a young, inexperienced species, but you're not fighting our government or our military. You're fighting 3 billion humans who spent their entire history learning how to kill each other more efficiently." Hayes finished his work and stood up. The station's lights flickered as his programming took effect. Throughout Nexus Prime, security doors began locking down and communication systems started broadcasting his message on all frequencies. "And the thing about humans is," Hayes said, looking down at Vorthik, "when you threaten our home, we don't just fight back. We make sure you never threaten anyone again." Hayes moved toward the door, but stopped and looked back at the injured alien. "By the way," he said with a cold smile, "my real name isn't Jake Morrison either. But it doesn't matter what you call me. From now on, everyone on this station is going to know me by a different name." "What name?" Vorthik managed to whisper. Hayes' smile became something that would haunt the alien's nightmares. "Death." The door sealed behind him as Hayes stepped into the corridor. The hunt was about to begin. Hayes moved through the station's corridors like a shadow. The diplomatic quarters were in chaos. Alien security teams ran from room to room, searching for the human who had escaped their interrogation chamber. They found nothing but empty hallways and locked doors. Hayes had vanished into the maintenance tunnels that ran between the station's walls. During his 3 days of exploration, he had memorized every service corridor, every ventilation shaft, and every emergency access point. The aliens had built Nexus Prime to be a fortress, but they had never considered that someone might use their own design against them. In the Central Command Center, Admiral Kethver of the Saurian fleet received the first reports. The massive alien studied the security monitors with growing anger. His subordinates stood nervously around him, waiting for orders. "One human," Admiral Kethver said slowly. "One single human has disabled our security chief and 3 guards. How is this possible?" "Sir, we underestimated his capabilities," replied Commander Sithran. "Our intelligence suggested humans were not physically capable of matching Saurian warriors in combat. Clearly our intelligence was wrong." The Admiral's claws scraped against the metal console. "How many security teams do we have searching?" "For him, 12 teams, sir. 60 soldiers total. Double it. I want every corridor, every room, every storage compartment searched. This human cannot be allowed to escape." But Hayes had no intention of escaping. He had work to do. From his hiding place in the Environmental Control Center, Hayes accessed the station's main computer systems. His diplomatic credentials still worked, and the aliens had not thought to disable them. They assumed he was just running scared, trying to find a way off the station. Hayes began his real mission. He uploaded a virus into the communication system that would broadcast on all Council frequencies. The message was simple but devastating. It contained recorded conversations between Council members discussing their plans to attack Earth. It also included detailed information about their military positions and battle plans. Within hours, the message was spreading throughout Council space. Independent colonies, neutral species, and even some Council members who had not been told about the attack began to question what was happening. Hayes also sent a coded message to Earth through the station's deep space transmitters. The message would take time to reach home, but it contained everything Earth's military needed to know about the coming attack. While Hayes worked, the search teams continued hunting for him. They had no idea he was using their own security cameras to watch them. He had hacked into the monitoring system and could see every move they made. The first team that got close to Hayes was searching the maintenance levels near the power core. There were 8 Saurian soldiers, heavily armed and moving in formation. They thought they were hunting a desperate human who was trying to hide. They were wrong. Hayes waited until they entered a narrow corridor, then cut the power to that section. The aliens found themselves in complete darkness, fumbling with emergency lights. Hayes moved through the dark like he was born in it, using sound and movement to track his enemies. The first soldier went down silently, knocked unconscious by a precise blow to the head. The second never saw Hayes coming. The third managed to shout a warning before Hayes disabled him. By the time the emergency lights came back on, 3 soldiers were unconscious and Hayes was gone. The remaining 5 aliens searched frantically, but found nothing except their fallen comrades. "Command, this is Search Team 7, their leader reported over the radio. "The human is not running, he is hunting us." Similar reports came in from other teams throughout the night. Hayes struck again and again, always disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. He used the station's own systems against the aliens, turning off gravity in some sections, filling others with harmless but blinding gas from the fire suppression systems. The aliens began to understand they were not dealing with an ordinary enemy. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not follow the standard rules of warfare that governed most galactic conflicts. Admiral Kethver called an emergency meeting of the Council representatives still on the station. The massive Saurian paced back and forth in the secure conference room while the other aliens watched nervously. "This human is making fools of us," the Admiral snarled. "How can one individual cause so much damage?" Diplomatic Coordinator Lithwan, the ethereal who had welcomed Hayes to the station, spoke in a worried voice. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The human's message is spreading throughout the galaxy. Several member species are demanding explanations. The attack on Earth will proceed as planned, Admiral Kethver replied. But first, we deal with this human. I am authorizing the use of heavy weapons. Seal off sections of the station and search them with combat troops. Sir. Commander Sithran interrupted. Using heavy weapons inside the station could damage vital systems. Then we will repair them afterward. This human must be stopped. But Hayes was already 3 steps ahead of them. He had been listening to their communications through the hacked security system. He knew about their plan to use heavy weapons. And he had prepared for it. From his new position in the station's reactor control room, Hayes began the next phase of his plan. He started overloading the power systems in specific sections of the station. Not enough to cause explosions, but enough to make those areas too dangerous to search. He also began broadcasting on the station's internal communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor and room. "Attention Council forces," Hayes said in a calm, cold voice. "You have made a mistake. You thought you were capturing a diplomat. You thought you could eliminate Earth without consequences. You were wrong on both counts." The aliens listening to his broadcast felt something they had never experienced before when facing this single enemy: fear. "I am not your prisoner," Hayes continued. "You are mine. This station is now under my control. Every system, every corridor, every room belongs to me. You can search for me, but you will never find me unless I want you to." Hayes paused, letting his words sink in. "Your fleets are moving toward Earth, but they will arrive to find a prepared enemy. Your attack plans are now known throughout the galaxy. Your member species are questioning your leadership, all because you thought one human was not a threat." In the command center, Admiral Kethver smashed his clawed fist against the console. "Cut the transmission." "We cannot, sir," a technician replied. "He has control of the system." Hayes' voice continued. "But I am not unreasonable. I will give you one chance to avoid the total destruction of your forces. Call off the attack on Earth. Surrender your military commanders for trial. Begin negotiations for a new peace treaty that recognizes human sovereignty." "Never, Admiral." Kethver roared. "Then you have chosen war," Hayes replied. "And you have no idea what humans are truly capable of when we fight for our survival." The transmission ended, leaving the station in silence. In that silence, every alien on Nexus Prime realized that they were no longer the hunters. They had become the prey. Admiral Kethver stood in the command center, watching his forces fail to capture one human. 3 days had passed since Hayes escaped, and the situation was getting worse every hour. Half his security teams were too injured or too scared to continue searching. The other half jumped at shadows and shot at maintenance robots. "Sir," Commander Sithran reported, "we have lost contact with search teams 4, 9, and 12. The human has disabled them all. How many soldiers have we lost?" The Admiral asked through gritted teeth. 43 wounded, 12 missing. And all of them defeated by one human who should not even be able to lift our weapons. Admiral Kethver slammed his claws against the console again, the metal bent under the force. "This is impossible. Humans are supposed to be weak. Our intelligence." Reports said they were barely capable of spaceflight. "Perhaps our intelligence was wrong about many things," Commander Sithran suggested carefully. Before the Admiral could respond, every screen in the command center flickered to life. Hayes appeared on the monitor, sitting calmly in what looked like the station's main reactor control room. He wore the same diplomatic suit he had arrived in, but it was now torn and stained. His face showed no fear, only cold determination. "Admiral Kethver," Hayes said, looking directly into the camera. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you, human," the Admiral snarled. "Then listen," Hayes replied. "Right now your fleets are moving toward Earth. You have approximately 18 hours before they reach our outer colonies. But the situation has changed significantly since you began this operation. Hayes touched something off-screen, and new images appeared on the monitors. They showed alien ships throughout Council space, but these ships were not heading toward Earth. They were heading toward each other. Your broadcast about the attack has caused a civil war, Hayes continued. 6 Council member species have declared they will not support unprovoked assault on Earth. The Chithari Trade Federation has cut off all supply lines to your military. The Ethereal Collective has withdrawn their ships from your joint operations. Admiral Kefver studied the images with growing alarm. The human was right. The Council was tearing itself apart. But that's not the worst part, Hayes said with a cold smile. The worst part is what happened 3 hours ago. The screens changed again, showing a massive fleet of human ships emerging from faster-than-light travel. The ships were sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything the Council had seen before. Allow me to introduce Admiral Kate Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, Hayes said. She received my warning and decided to bring some friends to our little diplomatic meeting. A new voice spoke from the communication system. It was a woman's voice, strong and confident. This is Admiral Morrison to all Council forces. You are ordered to stand down immediately and prepare for boarding. Any hostile action will be met with the complete destruction of your vessels. Admiral Kefver stared at the screens in shock. The human fleet was enormous. There were not 12 ships as their intelligence had reported, but over 200. And they were surrounding Nexus Prime with weapons trained on the station. Impossible, the Admiral whispered. Our scouts reported that Earth had no significant military force. Hayes laughed, a sound without humor. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see. Did you really think a species that has been fighting wars for 10,000 years would put all their defenses where enemies could count them? The truth began to dawn on Admiral Kefver. Everything they knew about humans was wrong. The weak, primitive species they had planned to eliminate was actually a military powerhouse that had been hiding its true strength. You played us, the Admiral said with grudging respect. From the beginning, Hayes confirmed. Earth has been preparing for this moment since we first detected your monitoring of our communications. We knew someone out there was watching us. We knew they would eventually see us as a threat. So we gave them exactly what they expected to see. Hayes stood up and walked closer to the camera. But here's what you didn't understand about humans, Admiral. We don't just prepare for war. We prepare for the peace that comes after war. And right now, you have a choice. Admiral Kefver said nothing, waiting to hear the humans' terms. Option 1, Hayes continued, is total war. Admiral Morrison has enough firepower to turn this station into cosmic dust, and her fleet can reach your home worlds before your attack force reaches Earth. We will destroy your military, occupy your planets, and rebuild your government according to human standards. The Admiral's blood ran cold at the thought. And option 2? Option 2 is negotiation. You call off your attack fleets immediately. You surrender the commanders who planned this assault. And you sit down with me right now to work out a new arrangement between our species. Hayes paused, letting the weight of the choice settle over the alien commander. I should mention that several Council species have already contacted Admiral Morrison to discuss switching sides. The Chithari want to establish exclusive trade agreements with Earth. The Ethereals are interested in our cultural exchange programs. Even some of your own Saurian captains are questioning whether this war is worth fighting. Admiral Kefver looked around the command center at his remaining officers. He could see doubt in their eyes. The confidence they had felt just days ago was gone, replaced by the realization that they had picked a fight with the wrong species. If I agree to negotiate, the Admiral said slowly, what guarantee do I have that you will honor any agreement? The same guarantee you gave Earth when you planned to attack us without warning, Hayes replied. None. The difference is, humans keep their word when it benefits us, and we destroy our enemies when they threaten us. You get to choose which category you fall into. For a long moment, the command center was silent except for the hum of machinery and the distant sound of Admiral Morrison's fleet taking positions around the station. Finally, Admiral Kethver spoke. "I will order the attack fleets to stand down, but I want to meet with you in person before any formal negotiations begin." "Acceptable," Hayes said. "Conference room 7, 1 hour. Come alone. And if this is a trap?" Hayes smiled again, but this time there was something almost diplomatic about it. "Admiral, if I wanted you dead, you would already be dead. I've had 3 days to kill everyone on this station, if that was my goal. The fact that you're still breathing should tell you something about human intentions." The screens went dark, leaving Admiral Kethver alone with his thoughts and his choices. 1 hour later, Admiral Kethver entered Conference Room 7. Hayes was already there, sitting at the same table where they had conducted their fake trade negotiations just days before. But everything was different now. The human no longer pretended to be harmless, and the Admiral no longer held the advantage. "Before we begin," Hayes said, "I want you to understand something. I am still a diplomat. Everything I have done here was to create the conditions necessary for successful negotiations. Now we can discuss the real terms for peace between our species." Admiral Kethver sat down across from Hayes. "What do you want?" "Recognition of human sovereignty over our current territory, establishment of formal diplomatic relations, and a mutual defense treaty to prevent this kind of misunderstanding in the future." "And in return?" Hayes leaned back in his chair. "Humans share our technology with peaceful species. We respect existing territorial boundaries, and we help maintain galactic stability through joint military operations when necessary." The Admiral considered this. "Your terms are reasonable. Humans are reasonable when treated with respect," Hayes replied. "We become unreasonable when threatened with extinction." "Admiral." Kethver nodded slowly. "I think we can work with these terms." Hayes extended his hand across the table. "Then welcome to the new galactic order, Admiral. One where humans are partners, not prey." As they shook hands, Admiral Kethver realized that the human had been right about one thing. When dealing with humans, it was always better to choose diplomacy, because the alternative was facing an entire species that had just proven they could turn any diplomatic mission into a military victory.